Top 1. The San Luis Valley Phenomenon. In 1975, in the remote plains of southern Colorado, a law enforcement officer named Gabe Valdez was called to investigate a string of unexplained cattle mutilations near the town of Dulce. What he found that evening was not a predator, nor a human culprit. As he surveyed the area, an amber-colored object emerged silently in the sky. It hovered completely motionless above the desert for several minutes before accelerating straight upward and vanishing. Valdez documented the incident in his report, noting the absence of sound, the lack of rotor wash or engine noise, and the precise stillness of the craft. When he forwarded the report to state authorities, there was no reply. What happened that night was strange. What made it stranger was that locals in the San Luis Valley had been reporting similar incidents for decades. The San Luis Valley stretches across 8,000 square miles of high desert framed by the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Sparsely populated and largely undeveloped, it offers a clear view of the sky from any direction. For reasons no one can fully explain, this patch of land has become one of the most active UFO regions in North America. Residents describe glowing orbs that hover silently, metallic crafts that shift direction instantly without banking, and triangular shapes that seem to melt into the night sky. These are not fleeting glimpses or lights mistaken for stars. Many of the sightings are recorded, tracked on radar, and corroborated by multiple witnesses. In 2003, a group of amateur researchers established a permanent skywatch station in the valley. Over the next 4 years, they documented more than 300 anomalous aerial events. One of the most compelling occurred in November 2005. An object the size of a small aircraft appeared on their thermal cameras. It moved at an estimated speed of 2,000 miles per hour, stopped mid-flight, hovered for 15 seconds, then vanished vertically. Infrared footage of the event was later analyzed by retired aerospace engineers, who concluded that no known propulsion system could account for the movement. One of them noted that the maneuver would have liquefied any human pilot inside. Local residents report more than just sightings. Many describe interference with electronics during the events. Car engines stall without warning. Radios emit static. Home power flickers momentarily. In one case, a rancher's entire grid-connected fence system shut down seconds before a glowing orb passed directly overhead. When the light disappeared, power resumed. Utility companies found no faults in the system. Authorities have remained largely silent on the matter. A handful of military officials have visited the region over the years, often unannounced, and sometimes accompanied by unmarked aircraft. When questioned, they attribute their presence to training or weather monitoring. But former air traffic controllers in the area report having been told not to log certain radar events, especially those that did not correspond to known flight plans. A local journalist who began compiling witness testimonies in 2010 later claimed her computers were remotely wiped, her backups corrupted, and her phone lines tapped. She abandoned the project. Despite this, the sightings have not stopped. In fact, they have increased. In recent years, reports have come in weekly, sometimes daily. A school teacher captured video of 3 glowing spheres rotating in a triangular pattern above her property. A retired Air Force mechanic saw a disc-shaped object hovering silently near Blanca Peak. A visiting astrophotographer recorded a metallic object hovering for 7 minutes, visible through infrared, but not visible to the naked eye. The question is not whether something is happening in the San Luis Valley. The question is what or who keeps returning. The precision, repetition, and technological impossibility of the phenomena suggest intelligence. But intelligence with what intent? The valley has become a silent theater of the unexplained, with no curtain, no actors revealed, and no end in sight. Top 2. The Hessdalen Lights. In the winter of 1981, residents of a quiet valley in central Norway began reporting strange lights appearing in the sky. These weren't distant flickers or aircraft mistaken for stars. They were glowing orbs, sometimes blue, sometimes white, sometimes red, that hovered silently over the snow-covered landscape. The lights moved slowly at first, then accelerated without a sound, shifting direction in ways that defied physics. Some stayed visible for hours, others pulsed rhythmically, lighting up the valley like a heartbeat in the sky. The sightings were so frequent that by January, entire families gathered outside at night just to watch them appear. And they always did. This place was Hessdalen Valley, a remote mountainous region near the Swedish border. With fewer than 200 residents and little urban development, the valley was an unlikely location for sustained aerial phenomena. Yet for months, the lights returned with startling regularity. Locals began keeping journals. A small tourist industry emerged as people traveled to witness what came to be known as the Hessdalen Lights. The events were so consistent that scientists took notice. In 1983, a team of Norwegian researchers from Østfold University set up what they called Project Hessdalen, deploying cameras, radar, magnetometers, and spectrometers to capture the phenomenon. The data they collected defied explanation. Some of the lights emitted electromagnetic radiation far outside the normal spectrum. Others moved at speeds clocked at over 30,000 kilometers per hour, then came to a complete stop midair. Radar confirmed physical presence. Optical cameras confirmed shape. Yet no aircraft, satellite, or drone could match the recorded maneuvers. One particularly chilling observation occurred in September 1984, when a glowing orb passed directly over the observation station. Instruments detected a gravitational anomaly lasting 6 seconds. The team could offer no explanation. Throughout the 1980s, the Norwegian military quietly visited the site, setting up temporary listening posts and high-frequency receivers. They claimed it was for research cooperation. Yet multiple researchers reported having their data erased or confiscated without notice. One incident involved a visiting Italian physicist who claimed his hard drives were taken during an unscheduled customs inspection at Oslo Airport. He never recovered the recordings. In 1998, Project Hessdalen evolved into the Hessdalen Automatic Measurement Station, AMS, a permanent monitoring installation that remains operational today. The lights have continued to appear, though less frequently. Still, several events are captured each year, many recorded on multiple instruments. A 2007 episode showed a spinning, diamond-shaped light that pulsed at regular intervals before splitting into two distinct orbs and shooting off in opposite directions. Analysis revealed no signs of known propulsion or heat signature. To this day, no conventional explanation accounts for the repeated behavior. Local folklore suggests ancient legends tied to the valley's geography, claiming the mountains hide something not meant to be disturbed. Geologists have speculated that metallic minerals or piezoelectric effects could cause light emissions, but these theories fail to explain the speed, intelligence, or recurrence of the orbs. Some have suggested experimental aircraft, though no government has claimed involvement or produced matching prototypes. What remains disturbing is not just the phenomenon itself, but its persistence. Hessdalen has been watched for over 4 decades. The lights continue to appear. They do not communicate, but they do respond. They seem to know when they are being watched. And yet, after thousands of sightings and hours of footage, no one can explain what they are, why they come, or what they want. The valley remains open, the sky remains dark, and the lights remain silent. Top 3. The Yakima Ridge Encounters. In 1972, near the Yakima Indian Reservation in Washington State, a fire lookout stationed along the ridge witnessed something that would alter his understanding of reality. Late one evening, as he scanned the surrounding forest for signs of smoke, he noticed a bright object hovering silently above the tree line. It was oval-shaped, glowing with a pale white light, and remained completely stationary for nearly 10 minutes before shooting off horizontally at a speed too fast for the eye to track. He reported the incident to his supervisor, but the response was curt and dismissive. "Don't mention it again." That lookout post was later closed. The sightings, however, did not stop. The Yakima Ridge region has since become a persistent zone of unexplained aerial activity. Stretching along a geological uplift in central Washington, the area is defined by volcanic rock formations, deep ravines, and dense pine forests. It is also situated near military training grounds and Native American lands, two factors that complicate access and official transparency. Over the decades, tribal police, U.S. Forest Service workers, and local residents have documented dozens of unexplained lights and craft hovering, darting, or zigzagging across the skies. What makes Yakima Ridge especially unsettling is the frequency with which these objects appear to interact with electrical systems. Several reports detail incidents where radios went dead, batteries drained instantly, or entire transformer stations briefly shut down as glowing orbs passed nearby. In one case in 1994, a group of campers on the eastern slope reported their car alarm triggering by itself just moments before they saw a silent, black triangle floating above the treetops. As it passed, their headlights dimmed to nothing. The event lasted less than a minute, but all four witnesses described the object identically and independently. In response to mounting reports during the late 1970s, the U.S. Army established a temporary research post near the Yakima Training Center. While officially labeled as a communications calibration unit, it operated in complete radio silence. According to leaked internal memos obtained years later, the team monitored atmospheric disturbances and high-frequency anomalies coinciding with unidentified aerial incidents. One soldier assigned to the station later confessed that they were ordered not to discuss what they saw, only to record, transmit, and erase. Amateur researchers have attempted to film the events from surrounding hillsides, often with mixed results. Some captured erratic lights darting across the skyline. Others recorded hovering shapes that vanish as soon as cameras focus. In 2001, a group using night vision optics documented a spherical object descending into the ridge, only to rise again minutes later and shoot upward into the sky. The footage, though grainy, showed an acceleration no known drone or aircraft could achieve. No civilian authority has officially investigated the Yakima events. When questioned, local agencies cite jurisdictional issues or dismiss the sightings as atmospheric illusions. The tribal council has remained largely silent, though one elder stated in an interview, "They've been here longer than we have." To this day, local stories persist of floating lights that follow vehicles along back roads or hover silently over lakes. Some say the lights retreat into the mountains themselves, disappearing into sheer rock as if the land were hollow. The question that lingers is why Yakima Ridge remains so active, yet so ignored. Why do the same paths see the same phenomena across decades? Why do power outages coincide with silent intrusions in the sky? Why do cameras malfunction only when the objects approach? There is no official presence here anymore. No watchtower, no research post, no attempt to explain what is repeatedly seen and never understood. Top 4. The Puerto Rico Trench Entry Point. On the night of October 28, 2013, an air traffic controller stationed at Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, noticed an unidentified object moving rapidly across radar. It was not a scheduled flight, nor a known military operation. The object flew inland from the ocean at low altitude, made no sound, and displayed no transponder signal. Minutes later, a U.S. Customs and Border Protection aircraft captured thermal footage of the same object. The video showed a glowing sphere flying over the airport, dipping into the Atlantic Ocean, and then re-emerging, all without losing speed. The footage was analyzed by independent experts who reached the same conclusion. This was no drone, no weather balloon, and no natural phenomenon. This incident is only one of hundreds tied to the deep waters surrounding Puerto Rico. In particular, the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest part of the Atlantic Ocean, has become a recurring entry and exit point for unidentified aerial and submersible objects. Fishermen report glowing orbs diving beneath the waves without creating splashes. Naval sonar has detected metallic shapes moving underwater at speeds no submarine can reach. These objects do not behave like anything engineered by known technologies. They accelerate underwater, stop abruptly, reverse course instantly, and, in some cases, ascend straight into the sky. What sets this region apart is the seamless transition between air and water. Unlike conventional vehicles, which require pressure sealing, propulsion systems, and design adaptations to operate in both mediums, the objects observed near Puerto Rico display no change in behavior between sky and sea. In one 1995 incident, the crew of a cargo vessel observed a luminous sphere rise from the water surface and hover silently. When they attempted radio contact, their instruments failed. The object then ascended vertically at high velocity and disappeared into the clouds. The Coast Guard later denied receiving any reports. Local authorities remain tight-lipped. The U.S. Navy, which operates in the region, has refused to comment on sonar data or visual reports. Yet leaked documents suggest the Navy maintains permanent surveillance arrays along the trench, not for seismic activity as publicly stated, but for tracking unusual subaqueous movement patterns. One former sonar technician disclosed that they were trained to categorize certain signals as Type X anomalies, which were then rerouted to higher-level review channels and never spoken of again. The island's residents have grown accustomed to the mystery. Some refer to the lights as guardians, others as invaders. Stories abound of underwater bases, alien installations, or ancient technologies hidden deep within the trench. While these claims lack direct proof, the consistency of the sightings and the refusal of authorities to engage publicly only fuel speculation. Several Puerto Rican researchers have attempted to organize open studies, but funding is routinely denied and access to military zones restricted. In 2015, a group of independent scientists deployed a deep-sea probe near the suspected hotspot. Within minutes of descent, the probe lost signal. When retrieved, its casing was warped, and its internal components fried beyond recognition. Analysis showed no sign of physical impact or water breach. The data logs ended abruptly with one final recorded value, a sudden magnetic spike far beyond natural levels. What lies beneath the Puerto Rico Trench remains unknown, but something is there. It enters and exits without warning. It ignores airspace. It defies oceanic pressure. It avoids detection, yet sometimes allows itself to be seen, as if by design. What kind of intelligence would move so freely between worlds, and what are they using the trench for? Top 5. The Rendlesham Forest Incident. In the early hours of December 26, 1980, at a military base straddling the border between England and the United States, alarms were triggered by an unidentified light descending into the trees. Personnel at RAF Woodbridge, operated at the time by the U.S. Air Force, believed an aircraft had crashed into nearby Rendlesham Forest. A small team was dispatched to investigate. What they found was not a downed plane, but a metallic object resting silently on the forest floor. It emitted a pulsating blue glow, stood on 3 legs, and appeared to ripple with static electricity. As they approached, the object lifted silently above the trees and vanished. The men returned to base shaken, unsure of what they had seen, but the events were far from over. Over the next 2 nights, more military personnel reported strange lights in the forest. One of them, Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, led a second team to the site. They carried Geiger counters, tape recorders, and cameras. As they entered the forest, they observed a red orb hovering between the trees, weaving silently as if observing them. Instruments spiked. Radio signals cut in and out. Halt recorded everything on tape, including his own voice describing the object as it split into multiple lights and shot across the sky. That recording remains one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in UFO history. The site where the initial landing occurred showed physical anomalies. Trees were scorched. Branches were snapped in a triangular pattern. Soil samples revealed unusual radiation readings. 3 indentations marked the ground in a perfect equilateral triangle. Photographs taken of the site later disappeared from the base archive. The official explanation was that the men had mistaken a lighthouse for a UFO, but none of the personnel accepted that explanation, and the lighthouse was never in the line of sight from where the object had landed. Years later, several of the original witnesses came forward with detailed affidavits. One of them, Sergeant Jim Peniston, claimed to have approached the craft directly and touched its surface. He described strange symbols etched into the metal, symbols that resembled hieroglyphs. Upon contact, he said he received a vision of binary code, which he later wrote down. The code, when translated by civilian analysts, appeared to reference ancient sites around the globe and something ominously labeled as continuous exploration of humanity. Despite being one of the most thoroughly documented military UFO encounters in history, no formal investigation was launched by NATO or either national government. Internal communications from the time refer to the event as classified and not to be pursued. When Freedom of Information requests were filed, key documents were missing or heavily redacted. One British intelligence officer later admitted off the record that Rendlesham came closer than anything else to exposing the truth. But what truth exactly? The object that landed in Rendlesham Forest did not behave randomly. It returned multiple nights. It appeared to react to human presence. It disabled communications, distorted instruments, and left behind physical evidence. And then it disappeared, as if never there. But the personnel who witnessed it never forgot. Many suffered long-term health effects, and several experienced recurring dreams involving strange symbols and unexplainable landscapes. What came to Rendlesham was not a light in the sky. It was an intrusion into reality itself, observed, recorded, and then buried beneath layers of denial. The forest remains, but whatever entered it that winter night left behind a silence that continues to echo. Top 6. The Colares Island Assault. In the fall of 1977, the skies above Colares Island, off the northern coast of Brazil, erupted with fear. Residents of the small fishing community began reporting glowing objects hovering above their homes at night. These were not distant lights or fleeting flashes. They were low-flying, silent craft that emitted focused beams of light, often directed at individuals. Within weeks, dozens of people claimed they had been burned, temporarily paralyzed, or suffered strange puncture wounds after contact with the beams. The panic escalated as entire neighborhoods began sleeping outdoors in groups, armed with flashlights and fireworks in desperate attempts to scare the lights away. They called them chupa-chupas, suckers, for the way the beams seemed to drain strength and consciousness from those struck. Local doctors began documenting the injuries. One physician, Dr. Welaide Sesim Carvalho, treated over 40 victims, most presenting with symptoms of radiation exposure. Patients reported dizziness, fatigue, blackouts, and burns that defied classification. Strangely, many burns occurred without heat or flame, and some were shaped like geometric patterns. The victims came from different areas of the island, with no contact between them, yet their stories were identical. Word of the events reached the Brazilian military, which quickly dispatched a secret unit under Operation Saucer, Operação Prado, to investigate. Led by Captain Uirangue Holanda, the team arrived on Colares equipped with cameras, measuring instruments, and high-resolution optics. Over the next 4 months, they recorded hundreds of hours of observations. Photographs taken during the mission showed spherical craft, metallic discs, and cigar-shaped vehicles performing aerial maneuvers, well beyond the capability of any known aircraft. In one chilling case, a soldier reported being paralyzed while a glowing object hovered just feet above him. He could not move or speak until the object retreated into the clouds. The entire episode was recorded on infrared film, but the footage was never made public. The team concluded that the phenomenon was real and posed a threat to civilians. Yet upon returning to headquarters, Operation Saucer was abruptly shut down. All documents, photographs, and film reels were classified. Captain Holanda later gave a rare interview in 1997, revealing the full scope of the mission. Weeks after that interview aired, he was found dead in his home, hanged with a bathrobe cord. His death was ruled a suicide, though colleagues insisted he had shown no signs of distress and was preparing to release more files. The people of Colares were left with no answers. The military denied involvement. Civilian records were lost. Researchers who later tried to access medical documents found archives empty or destroyed. Dr. Carvalho, under pressure, was reassigned. The island's story faded into obscurity, remembered only in whispers. But the events did not stop. In the 1980s and again in the early 1990s, small flares of activity returned. Witnesses described the same glowing objects, the same beams, the same sense of paralysis. This time, the incidents were fewer and less violent, but the pattern was unmistakable. Something had marked Colares, and it was not finished. To this day, the question of what happened on that remote Brazilian island remains one of the most disturbing and underreported UFO cases on record. These were not distant lights or speculative shapes in the sky. They came close. They interacted. They caused harm. And then they vanished, leaving only classified documents and a handful of survivors who still refuse to sleep alone under open skies. Top 7. The Wycliffe Well Corridor. During the dry season of 1990, a group of travelers camping near the remote roadhouse settlement of Wycliffe Well in Australia's Northern Territory were startled awake by a deep, humming vibration. Looking skyward, they saw a massive disc-shaped object hovering silently above the desert. It emitted no sound, but the atmosphere felt charged, like static before a storm. The object glowed with a dull orange light, rotated slowly, then tilted and ascended vertically into the night. None of the witnesses could explain what they saw, but all described the same shape, the same color, and the same stillness. They would later learn that their encounter was not unique. In Wycliffe Well, it was routine. Often referred to as Australia's UFO capital, Wycliffe Well sits along the Stewart Highway, surrounded by arid desert and hundreds of miles from major population centers. For decades, reports of unidentified flying objects in this region have emerged with such frequency that the town itself began documenting them. Sightings have been logged since World War II, with soldiers stationed nearby reporting strange lights moving at impossible speeds across the horizon. Locals have grown so accustomed to the phenomenon that a public UFO logbook was once kept at the roadhouse, filled with entries from truck drivers, tourists, and outback workers. The sightings tend to follow a pattern. Bright lights appear over the McDonnell Ranges, often in pairs or trios, hovering before darting off in complete silence. Some observers report the lights dropping vertically into the desert. Others see them traveling parallel to the ground at speeds unmatched by conventional aircraft. A 2003 incident involved a mining engineer whose vehicle stalled as a blue sphere hovered over the road ahead. When it vanished, the car restarted without issue. Mechanics later found no fault in the engine or battery. Local Aboriginal communities have long considered the area sacred, filled with ancestral stories of sky visitors and star ancestors who came down from the heavens to watch, teach, and sometimes take. These stories, passed down orally, include descriptions of glowing skyboats and beings that move between stars and desert. Anthropologists have noted the striking similarities between these ancient tales and modern UFO reports. Yet few mainstream researchers have examined the connection. The Australian government has officially downplayed the phenomenon, offering no formal studies or public comment. However, internal defense communications released through Freedom of Information requests show that radar anomalies and unauthorized airspace intrusions have been logged repeatedly in the region. One file from 1996 describes an unknown aerial contact moving without transponder, signal, or response to hails, departing at velocity exceeding known aircraft capabilities. The file was marked closed, no further action. Despite the isolation, Wycliffe Well has attracted attention from independent investigators. In 2012, a team from Melbourne set up thermal cameras and long-range optical scopes to monitor the skies. For 2 weeks, they recorded over a dozen events, including a formation of 3 lights moving in perfect unison, shifting from triangular to linear formation before blinking out. No sound was heard, no aircraft were reported in the area. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect is the regularity. Unlike isolated sightings, Wycliffe Well's activity seems to follow a schedule. Many observers note that appearances peak in May and November, as if something is checking in or returning. Some believe the desert acts as a natural gateway. Others suggest a base hidden beneath the sand. Whatever the explanation, the objects keep coming. In a place where sightings are so common they are almost mundane, one might expect answers. Yet despite the decades of reports, recordings, and government files, no explanation has ever been offered. The skies remain open, the desert remains quiet, and the lights return year after year, as if drawn back by something only they understand. Top 8. The Bonnie Bridge Triangle. In the early spring of 1992, a delivery driver traveling near the town of Bonnybridge in central Scotland pulled over to check a strange light hovering above the road. What he saw was a silent, black, triangular object slowly gliding through the sky, its underside lined with red and white lights. He stood frozen as the craft passed directly over him, emitting no sound, no vibration, and no wind. The object eventually vanished over the nearby hills. When he reported the sighting to local authorities, they simply nodded. Bonnybridge, he was told, had seen much stranger. Located between Glasgow and Edinburgh, Bonnybridge sits at the heart of what is now known as the Falkirk Triangle, a region that has become synonymous with unexplained aerial activity. Since the early 1990s, this small Scottish town has recorded over 300 sightings annually. Residents describe flying discs, glowing spheres, and massive black triangles lingering silently over fields, roads, and even residential homes. Some objects hover for minutes before vanishing at impossible speed. Others follow vehicles or remain stationary in the sky for hours. The reports span every demographic, Police officers, school teachers, farmers, and local council members have all come forward with detailed accounts. In one particularly striking case, a family of 5 observed a formation of 5 white lights flying in perfect sync over their house. The object stopped mid-flight, rotated 90 degrees, then continued onward without changing altitude. Radar records from nearby air traffic control centers showed no aircraft in the area at the time. The frequency and consistency of the sightings drew attention from media and independent researchers. Several studies were launched, but few conclusions reached. In 1994, local councillor Billy Buchanan began petitioning the British Ministry of Defence for an official inquiry. His requests were met with vague responses. When documents were released through public pressure, they contained large redactions and standard explanations about weather balloons and misidentified aircraft. But many residents knew better. The objects they saw were not shaped like balloons. They didn't drift. They moved with purpose. Investigators using electromagnetic sensors and thermal imaging have detected intermittent disturbances in the region, often coinciding with reports of sightings. Some theorize that geological fault lines beneath the area might produce energy anomalies that attract or enable the phenomena. Others believe the area is a testing ground for secret aircraft, yet no military base has ever claimed jurisdiction over the sightings, and no aircraft matching the descriptions has been declassified. Local folklore has begun to blend with modern reports. Tales now circulate of people experiencing lost time, strange dreams, and even telepathic impressions after sightings. While few claim direct abduction, several have reported waking up miles from where they fell asleep with no memory of how they arrived. One man described hearing a low-frequency hum every night for weeks after encountering a glowing orb outside his window. Despite years of high activity, Bonnie Bridge remains an enigma. The government maintains its distance, dismissing the town as a hotbed of misperception. Yet the sightings continue. In 2021, multiple residents recorded synchronized footage of 3 red lights in a triangular pattern moving silently across the sky. The object stopped in midair, rotated counterclockwise, then shot upward and disappeared. The videos went viral online but received no official response. What makes the Bonnie Bridge Triangle so compelling is not just the frequency of its sightings, but their unmistakable patterns. These are not random events. The same shapes appear, the same lights follow the same routes, the same silences accompany their flight. It's as if something is mapping the region again and again, over years with clinical precision. If Bonnie Bridge is being observed, the observers are consistent, methodical, and uninterested in being revealed. And still they come, always quiet, always just out of reach. Top 9. The Nellis Airspace Intrusions. In August 1994, an airman stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada was monitoring a routine live-fire exercise over a restricted training range when a blip appeared on radar. The object did not match any known aircraft, emitted no transponder signal, and moved in a flight pattern unlike anything seen before. As the airman watched, the object changed direction instantly without slowing, accelerating to Mach speeds and vanishing off-screen. The radar technician flagged the incident, expecting a follow-up. Instead, he was instructed to delete the data and not speak of it again. That incident was never recorded in official logs. Nellis Air Force Base is located near several of the most secretive military installations in the United States, including the Nevada Test and Training Range and the infamous Area 51. The region has long been associated with high-level experimental aircraft and classified aerospace projects. But even within this context, some events remain outside the boundaries of human engineering. Over the years, numerous radar operators, pilots, and base personnel have reported visual and instrumental contact with unidentified flying objects that perform maneuvers no known aircraft can replicate. In a series of incidents between 1992 and 1997, security teams assigned to the outer perimeter of the range reported sightings of glowing orbs and silent triangular craft hovering over the desert. These objects often appeared during no-fly windows and maneuvered at low altitudes. On multiple occasions, base communications were disrupted precisely during these intrusions. One former communications officer stated that encrypted radio channels became unusable during several of these events, only to return to normal as soon as the craft disappeared. Leaked footage from a training range control station in 1994 shows a thermal signature of an object moving erratically across the sky. The camera locks onto the object, which appears to change shape mid-flight, then vanishes in a flash of light. The voice on the recording can be heard saying, "That's not one of ours." The origin of the footage was never confirmed, but multiple military insiders have acknowledged that unidentified objects have been tracked in the area for years. Theories abound. Some suggest advanced stealth technology being tested in black projects. Others believe these intrusions are not man-made at all. What makes the Nellis incidents more disturbing is the lack of any attempts at interception. When asked why base aircraft were not scrambled, one former pilot said, "You can't chase something that doesn't want to be caught." Sensor data from satellites and ground-based systems has occasionally detected electromagnetic pulses and sudden drops in air pressure during the times these objects appear. In one documented case, a training drone lost power mid-flight as a glowing craft approached, plummeting to the desert floor. When technicians retrieved it, the onboard systems were intact, but all data had been erased. No fault was found in the hardware. Efforts to formally investigate these events have been blocked at multiple levels. Internal reports are categorized under obscure designations and funneled into classified compartments. Personnel who ask too many questions are reassigned or dismissed. Civilian air traffic logs are purged of anomalies, and FOIA requests often return with empty results or documents so redacted they are unreadable. Nellis is supposed to be the heart of American air superiority, a fortress of technology and control. Yet these objects move through its skies with impunity, watched but not confronted, logged but not pursued. They appear, they interfere, and they vanish. If even the most secure airspace on Earth can be penetrated by something unrecognized, then what exactly is in control of the skies? Top 10, the Nazca Sky Loop. In 2012, a team of geoglyph researchers conducting aerial surveys above the Nazca Plateau in southern Peru noticed something strange on their flight instruments. At precisely 11:47 a.m., as their small aircraft circled the famed geoglyphs, an unidentified object appeared at the edge of their radar. It moved swiftly from the western horizon, maintained a steady altitude, and executed a precise circular path directly over the plateau's central lines. The object then stopped midair, hovered silently for 6 seconds, and disappeared straight upward into the sky. The pilot filed a report, but the radar data mysteriously failed to save. It wasn't the first time such an event had occurred, and according to local guides, it wouldn't be the last. The Nazca lines have puzzled archaeologists and scientists for over a century. Carved into the arid desert floor more than 1,500 years ago, these massive figures, birds, fish, humanoids, and geometric patterns can only be fully appreciated from high above. The mystery has always been how a pre-modern civilization could design such precise and large-scale forms without any aerial perspective. But a second, quieter mystery has emerged. The skies above Nazca are among the most repeatedly visited by unexplained aerial objects. Since the 1970s, pilots flying both commercial and research aircraft over the Nazca region have reported glowing spheres, metallic shapes, and triangle formations appearing suddenly and following seemingly calculated paths. Many of these objects travel the same routes, moving in circular loops, often directly above the most complex of the ancient lines. Flight records show these sightings occur most often during equinox periods, leading some researchers to suspect astronomical alignments. In 2005, satellite monitoring detected a recurring thermal signature over a specific cluster of the glyphs, particularly near the hummingbird and astronaut figures. The heat pattern formed a ring shape, appearing briefly during the early morning hours before vanishing without trace. Ground inspections revealed no machinery, no fires, and no geological explanation. The area remained unchanged on the surface, yet the anomaly repeated itself every few weeks, like clockwork. Peruvian air authorities have never issued a public statement on the sightings, though leaked memos from Lima's Civil Aviation Department acknowledge at least 16 radar anomalies recorded over the plateau between 1998 and 2010. One memo described unknown aerial vehicles operating on non-standard flight paths, observed to execute loops over known geoglyph zones, and depart vertically beyond radar ceiling. The events were marked "No investigation requested." Local witnesses described lights that descend slowly and hover just above the lines before ascending again, in total silence. Some claim the objects respond to attention, approaching when observed through binoculars or focusing camera lenses. Tour guides speak of a sky loop pattern where the same flight path is traced repeatedly over a cluster of symbols, always beginning and ending in the same direction. What this behavior signifies is unknown. A small group of independent researchers has proposed a radical hypothesis that the Nazca lines were never meant to be seen by human eyes, but by something else, something returning on a schedule. If true, the repeated flight patterns over the plateau are not random, but intentional. The lines may not be maps, but signals, and the objects may not be exploring. They may be checking in. Despite decades of observation, no official attempt has been made to track the phenomenon systematically. Every incident is treated as isolated, despite their perfect repetition. The loops continue year after year, cycle after cycle, over one of the world's most mysterious ancient sites. If the skies above Nazca are being used, the question is not just by whom, but since when. The 10 locations documented in this investigation do not represent isolated events. They reveal a consistent and disturbing pattern, a global network of return points where unidentified aerial phenomena appear repeatedly, often on a predictable schedule, and always without explanation. These are not fleeting anomalies or one-time flukes. They are persistent, targeted, and deliberate. Each site seems to act like a node in an invisible grid, a fixed coordinate on a map not drawn by human hands. In every case, there is a systematic response to public interest: denial, misdirection, and silence. Reports vanish. Equipment malfunctions. Witnesses are ignored or discredited. Where government agencies are involved, documents are classified, footage is lost, and inquiries are redirected. Even when physical evidence is collected, radar logs, video footage, electromagnetic interference, it is either withheld or explained away with implausible conclusions. This is not mere coincidence. It reflects an organized suppression of phenomena that challenge existing frameworks of understanding. What is most alarming is not just what has been hidden, but what has been lost. If these recurring visits represent contact with advanced technology or intelligence, then every uninvestigated incident is a missed opportunity to understand our place in the universe. These phenomena may hold keys to energy systems beyond our reach, navigation methods unknown to physics, or insights into dimensions we have yet to perceive. But each unanswered sighting, each silenced report, pushes those possibilities further out of reach. With every forgotten witness and buried file, we lose a chance to advance, to learn, and perhaps to connect. Yet the events have not stopped. The lights still appear in Hestilin. Silent crafts still haunt the skies above Bonnybridge. Objects still rise from the Puerto Rico Trench and trace invisible patterns over Nazca. The same places, the same movements, the same silence. This suggests that whatever is behind these phenomena remains active, undeterred, and unconcerned by human attempts to ignore or suppress them. The true danger may not lie in the objects themselves, but in the institutional refusal to confront them. As long as the pattern is dismissed, the mystery remains unsolved. As long as the visits are denied, the intent remains unknown. And as long as the coordinates are fixed, they will return. The question was never whether they are real. The question is why they come back to the same places, and why no one ever follows them. If these accounts of unexplained phenomena have shifted your perspective on the world we inhabit, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history they have worked so hard to keep hidden. Let us plant the seeds for a clearer future. The next archive of the unknown will be open very soon.